Hi, my name is Don, and our assignment was to do research on an environmental disaster that was anthropogenic, which means it was man-made. I chose to do mine on the Love Canal incident, or also known as the Love Canal tragedy, or disaster. Um, it happened right here in New York, and I actually never heard about it until this class, and I found it to be very interesting. What it was, Love Canal was actually a town out in Niagara Falls area that had been um, developed. It was going to be developed by a man named William Love, who wanted to turn it into, sort of like a dream community where, working class American families could live there and make a nice living. And he had a pretty, different idea. He was going to use um, hydroelectricity using the Niagara Falls and Niagara River to power the city, and that was supposed to be a cheap and convenient way to get power to the city. Um, then Tesla came along and he invented alternating current, so that seemed to be more practical than William Love's idea. So the idea kind of went to the wayside, and the city kind of his idea of the town that he was going to make didn't exactly work out. So he eventually sold the land to the city of Niagara Falls in the 1920s, and they were going to use it for a landfill. It was the time around the World Wars, and it was also an industrial town, so they had a lot of waste that they had to get rid of. So they were going to use the land for that. So they used it for that for about 20 years, and then they sold the land. Niagara Falls sold the land to the Hooker Chemical Corporation, who was also to use it as a landfill for their chemicals, and they did that. And in 1953, they had already dumped 22,000 tons of waste in the area, and the fill was almost full. So with no more use for the land, really, Hooker, decided to they were going to sell the land to the Niagara Falls Board of Education, who needed land. They needed to build new schools because they were in need of that with the booming population at the time. So the Niagara Falls Board of Education bought it from Hooker Chemicals for $1. It was basically a gift. And so the Board of Education decided they were going to, build a town here, make a school, and it was going to be a nice little community, almost as William Love had envisioned. And so they started, the land was deemed safe. They had officials come in and check out the land, make sure it was okay to build on and live there, and it was officially, it was deemed that it was safe to live on. So the Board of Education, they started building, they built the school, they started building the houses around in the area, and in 1955, children began attending school in Love Canal. For the first few years, everything was going good. They didn't have any problems. The families were, working, making money. The kids were going to school. Everything was all right. And after a while, they started noticing some things. There were some strange odors they would notice, and puddles of chemicals would be coming up through the ground and things like that. So they had officials come in and take a look at it, and they had traces of phosphorus and toxic materials that were coming up through the land. So they had to do something about it. Unfortunately, it was too late before they really started to do anything about it, because kids were already coming home from school with burns from these chemicals and things like that. So in 1976, there was actually an unusual amount of precipitation and rainfall and snow in the area that caused a lot of these chemicals to seep up to the surface, and they found puddles of these chemicals all over the town, and even in people's basements, the chemicals were coming through. So they also started to notice pregnant women in Love Canal. They were having miscarriages. Children were being born with birth defects, similar birth defects, and they knew there was a real problem with these chemicals now. So the Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease came and did a study, and they found 400 chemicals that were present in the area, and including benzene, which is a known carcinogen, which means it causes cancer. And there was actually a woman named Lois Gibbs who her son kept getting sick, and she did a little research and found out that it was, because of these chemicals. So, she petitioned, got everybody in the area to petition. It reached the local media first, and then it, became a national thing, where Jimmy Carter, the President of the United States, got involved, including FEMA, and they realized they had to get these families out of the area, and start a cleanup there, and that's exactly what they did. And the governor of New York State at the time, Hugh Carey, made the announcement that the state was going to purchase the homes in the area and move the families out, which is what they did. And they began a cleanup plan, which involved, draining the chemicals out of the area, which, obviously would take years after this event, and it cost millions, billions of dollars. And there was, obviously a lot of negative side effects with, all the birth defects and all the health consequences to these people that live there. But the positives that came out of it were, it made people aware not to let something like this happen in the future. And a lot of laws were put in place by, the United States. One was it's called the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, also known as the Superfund. And what that does is it raises money, it collects money through taxes to help with cleanups for sites like this, so that there isn't, an incident like this in the future. And that was what happened at Love Canal.